The single mom waitress refused a ride home, but the mafia boss was already following her. The clock inside the Ashbury diner was mocking me. 11:47 p.m. The minute hand clicked over with a sound like a wet match striking. "You sure I can't give you a ride? Harlow, it's coming down out there." I looked at the man in booth 4. He was new. Maybe in town for the container shipping manifests. Maybe just passing through. He had the kind of smile that was all teeth and no warmth, and his silver sedan parked out front looked too clean for Brookhaven, New Jersey. "I'm good, thanks." The walk clears my head. I slid his check and his 10% tip into my apron pocket. The lie tasted like stale coffee. He shrugged, the fabric of his expensive suit pulling across his shoulders. "Your loss. A night like this. Pretty thing like you shouldn't be walking alone." I just smiled, the tight, non-committal smile that waitresses learn before they even learn the menu. Have a good night. I watched him climb into his sedan and pull away from the curb, his tires hissing on the wet asphalt. I waited another 2 minutes, a self-imposed rule, before pushing through the glass door into the drizzle. The air was cold. It smelled of the Atlantic, diesel exhaust, and the faint, metallic tang of the Harbor Works glass factory 2 blocks over. Brookhaven wasn't a city. It was a collection of damp bricks and bad decisions clinging to the coastline. I pulled the thin lapels of my coat tighter. It was a cheap thing, threadbare at the cuffs, but it covered my pink and white diner uniform. My hand instinctively went to the zipper of my backpack. Inside, beneath my algebra textbook, was a plastic container shaped like a dinosaur, half full of the macaroni and cheese my son Evan hadn't finished. He was 8. The backpack and the lunchbox inside was my armor. The safest way home wasn't the shortest. It involved sticking to lighted streets, avoiding the shortcut by the rail yard. I started walking, my sneakers already soaking through. I told myself the walk was fine. It was just water. It was just another night. But the man in the silver sedan had put a new kind of chill in the air, a specific, pointed kind of threat. Across the street, parked 50 yards down in the shadows of a defunct loading dock, a matte black coupe sat like a panther, its engine turned over, a low, guttural rumble that was felt more than heard. Inside, Silas Caravello watched the woman start her walk. He hadn't liked the silver sedan. He hadn't liked the man inside it. He tapped his earpiece. His voice was dry, like gravel settling. "He's gone. She's moving. Keep distance. Kill the fog lights. Don't let her know." A crackle of static. "Copy, boss." Silas put the car in gear, letting it creep forward, a shadow pacing a shadow. He watched her in the side view mirror, a small, determined figure moving against the city's grime. He'd been watching her for 3 weeks, ever since her name had appeared on a Baylight Trust ledger, a small, insignificant debt that had been flagged for aggressive collection. But Silas knew Baylight. He knew the Hollow Crown outfit that ran it, and he knew what aggressive collection meant when they hired out-of-town muscle. I made it 2 blocks before I felt it. It wasn't a sound, not at first. It was a change in the air behind me, a pressure. I risked a glance over my shoulder. 2 of them, hoodies pulled up, hands jammed in pockets, moving too fast to be casual. They weren't the silver sedan man. This was something else, something blunt and local. My heart didn't just beat, it kicked, hard against my ribs. "Don't run. Running invites the chase." I kept my pace steady, but my mind was racing. The next turn was the wide, bright-lit expanse of Astor Avenue, too far. Between here and there was the alley behind the Harbor Works factory. It was dark, a canyon of brick and dumpsters, but it was a shortcut that would spit me out 2 blocks closer to my apartment. A gamble. The footsteps behind me sped up, confident now. They knew I'd heard them. I made the choice. I hooked a sharp right, diving into the alley. The smell hit me first stale beer and shattered glass. The only light was a single flickering safety bulb 100 feet down. My sneakers, slick with rain, found no purchase. My left foot slid on a pile of broken green glass, a case of beer bottles tossed from the factory's upper window. I went down hard. My right knee hit the pavement, a sharp, searing impact that sent a wave of nausea up my throat. I felt the skin tear, the immediate wet warmth of blood mixing with the rainwater. I bit my lip to stop the scream. The backpack containing Evan's dinosaur lunchbox was still slung over one shoulder. I hugged it to my chest. I couldn't scream. My building was just on the other side of this block. Evan and my mother, Rosie, were up on the second floor. Noise meant bringing this to them. Silence was my only shield. I tried to scramble up, but my knee buckled. "Well, look at this." The voice was rough, pleased. They were there. One blocked the entrance I'd come from. The other stood over me, and he was breathing hard, smiling. "Deacon Marr sends his regards," the smiling one said. He reached down, not for me, but for the backpack. "Says you've been ignoring his calls about your little debt." "No," I whispered, clutching the bag. "Please, it's my son's. He can get another one." He grabbed the strap. I held on, a pathetic tug of war. The other one laughed. Before the smiling one could yank it free, before he could even register the change in the air, a shadow detached itself from the deeper darkness of the alley. It wasn't a sound. It was an absence of sound. The one blocking the alley entrance made a wet, choking noise. He slumped forward, his head hitting the brick wall with a dull thud before he slid to the ground. The smiling one looked up, confused, letting go of my bag. What the hell? The shadow was on him. It was a man, tall, dressed in a long, dark coat that seemed to drink the meager light. There was no fight. There was only movement. A hand, gloved in black leather, moved in a short, vicious arc, striking the man's throat. It was a precise chop, delivered with the kind of force that breaks things. The man's smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure, animal panic as he clawed at his neck, unable to breathe. A second strike, this one an elbow to the temple. The man dropped like a sack of wet cement, landing beside his partner. The alley was silent again, save for the rain and the sound of my own ragged breathing. The man in the dark coat stood there for a second, perfectly still, letting the silence settle. Then, slowly, he turned to me. I was still on the ground, my bloody knee throbbing, my entire body shaking so hard my teeth chattered. He was just a silhouette against the alley's dim exit. He took one step toward me. I flinched, dragging myself back against the grimy brick. He stopped. My voice was a tear. Who are you?" He didn't move. The rain dripped from the hem of his coat. When he spoke, his voice was the same one I'd heard in my memory, the low rumble from the coupe. "The man who pays the price for the debtor who hired these two." He looked down, not at my face, but at my leg. His gaze was so intense it felt like a physical touch, pinning the wound. "You're bleeding." He took another step and offered me his gloved hand. I ignored it. I used the wall to brace myself, pushing myself up onto my good leg, biting back another cry as my scraped knee screamed in protest. I kept the backpack tight against my chest. "I don't need your help," I said. My voice was shaking, but the words were firm. I'd refuse the man in the silver sedan. I would refuse the man in the black coat. Help from men like this, in a city like this, was just a different kind of debt. He looked at my face, really looked at me. For the first time, his eyes were dark, and I couldn't read the expression in them. It wasn't pity. It wasn't kindness. It was recognition. He didn't argue. He didn't push. He simply retracted his hand. "Get in the car. I'll take you home." "No." A flicker of something annoyance, maybe, or respect crossed his features. He gave a single, sharp nod. "Fine." He stepped back, melting into the shadows toward the alley entrance, leaving me a clear path to the other end. I limped past the two unconscious men, my eyes fixed on the flickering safety light at the far end. I didn't look back until I was out on the street. I was half running, half stumbling, the pain in my knee a white-hot fire. The matte black coupe was there, idling at the curb. It pulled out as I reached the corner, its headlights dark. I kept walking. The car stayed 50 yards behind me, a silent, menacing guardian. I heard his voice again, not in my ear, but in my head. "I'll follow behind until you're inside and safe." The rain started to fall harder, turning from a drizzle to a downpour, washing the blood from my knee and the glass from the alley. In the distance, the wail of a night shift siren cut through the air, a familiar Rookhaven lullaby. But tonight, it wasn't the only thing watching over the city. The lock on apartment 2B clicked, a sound louder than any gunshot in the sudden quiet of the hallway. I leaned my full weight against the door, pushing it shut, and slid the deadbolt across. Harlow, thank God. My mother, Rosie, was standing by the kitchenette, her hands wrapped in a dish towel, her face pale under the single 60-watt bulb. "I'm fine, Ma." I forced a smile that felt like broken glass. "You're late, and you're limping." "Just long shift." I dropped my keys in the ceramic bowl by the door. My son, Evan, was asleep at the small kitchen table, his head pillowed on his open third-grade math book. His pencil had rolled off the page, leaving a graphite smear next to a list of multiplication problems. He was 8 years old, and he was already inheriting my exhaustion. I limped into the tiny bathroom, the linoleum cold under my wet socks. I peeled off my soaked jeans, hissing as the fabric stuck to my knee. The cut was deep, a ragged gash already swelling, the pavement grime ground into it. I sat on the edge of the tub, dousing a washcloth with peroxide from the first aid kit. Rosie appeared in the doorway, holding a fresh bandage. "Harlow Vega, you tell me right now what happened." I scrubbed the wound, the white foam stinging, the pain a sharp, clean replacement for the fear. "A couple of guys. Ma, they followed me from the diner. They tried to grab my bag." Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide. "Did they hurt you? Did they—" "No." I slipped. I fell. And they ran off. I couldn't tell her the rest. I couldn't bring the man in the dark coat, the man who moved like a surgeon and struck like a hammer, into this apartment. I couldn't tell her that he was, almost certainly, still out there. "You have to call the police," she insisted, her voice trembling. "And say what, that I fell, that some guys in hoodies looked at me wrong. They'll write it down and then go get a donut. Ma, it's Rookhaven. I'm fine." I taped the gauze square over my knee, the white stark against my skin. Rosie didn't look convinced. She walked past me to the living room window, pulling the edge of the vinyl blind back an inch. Her breath fogged the glass. "What is it?" I asked, standing up, testing my weight on the bad leg. "That car," she whispered. "The black one, down by the corner. It's been there for an hour." My blood went cold. I joined her at the window, peering through the gap. There it was, the matte black coupe, its engine off, parked under the buzzing yellow street lamp. It was just sitting there, a predator at rest. He hadn't left. "It's probably just waiting for someone," I lied. "In this neighborhood, at 1 a.m, nobody waits. They honk, they grab, and they go." She let the blind fall, the plastic slats clicking shut. "That's a different kind of trouble. Harlow, that's suit jacket trouble." I didn't answer. I walked to the kitchen table, the real, everyday trouble laid out right next to my son's homework. A stack of envelopes. The first was bright red, the words "Final Notice" visible through the little window. Our rent, 2 months in arrears. The second was a pale, antiseptic blue, the bill from Rosie's last hospital visit for her bronchitis, the one our junk insurance barely covered. And the third was cream-colored, expensive cardstock, with a stylized logo of a bridge, Baylight Trust. It wasn't a bill. It was a demand. The polite legal language barely concealed the threat: failure to remit payment will result in further collection activity. Deacon Marr. That's what the man in the alley had said. Deacon Marr sends his regards. My phone buzzed on the counter. It wasn't a call, just a text from my manager at the diner, Sal. I read it aloud, my voice flat. "Just a heads up. This weekend, the Urban Security Inspectorate is doing a surprise check. Be on your best behavior. And if any of those suit jacket types come in looking for a quiet booth, try to keep them happy. We can't afford a write-up. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Suit jacket trouble. We're surrounded. Ma. Language, she chided gently, nodding toward Evan. I went over to my son. I stroked his hair. So soft, smelling like the cheap strawberry shampoo we used. I fought back the sudden, hot sting of tears. I wouldn't cry. Tears were a luxury, like new shoes or full coverage insurance. Hey, sleepyhead, I whispered, gently shaking his shoulder. Evan mumbled, stirring. He blinked up at me, his eyes unfocused. Then he smiled. A wide, gap-toothed grin that owned my entire world. Mommy, you're home. I'm home, baby. I started to clean up his books, but he grabbed my hand. Mommy, guess what the tryouts for the Rookhaven Ravens are on Saturday? Mister? Henderson put the sign-up sheet up. Can I please? I looked at the pile of bills. The Ravens was the local youth team. It required fees, equipment, cleats. It required time off I didn't have. We'll see. Ev, we'll talk about it in the morning. Is your leg okay? He asked, suddenly alert, pointing to the white bandage. I pulled my old robe tighter, hiding the scrape. Mommy's fine. I just slipped on the rain. Nothing to worry about. I tucked him in on the pull-out sofa, his makeshift bed in our one-bedroom apartment. I kissed his forehead. Go to sleep. Dream about hitting a home run. He was asleep again in 30 seconds. Outside, in the black Coupa. Silas Caravello sat in the driver's seat. The rain had slowed to a mist. He wasn't looking at the apartment building. He was looking at his own hand, resting on the steering wheel. His thumb traced the scar on his right wrist, a pale, jagged line that ran from his cufflink to the base of his hand. It was old, 20 years old, a reminder. He'd been young, just a capo then, trying to prove himself. He'd ordered a purge of a rival crew, a clean sweep. But the intel had been bad. The rival wasn't there. His sister, Elena, had been wrong place, wrong time, visiting a friend. She'd been caught in the crossfire. His crossfire. The scar was from a piece of shrapnel from the explosion. He'd pulled her body from the wreckage himself. He closed his eyes, the memory still sharp enough to draw blood. He'd sworn an oath that night, over her body. No more innocence, not on his watch, not for his business. The Mariner Syndicate had rules, and rule number 1 was that civilians, families, were off limits. The Hollow Crown outfit didn't have those rules. His passenger door opened. Jax Romano slid into the seat, brushing rain from his jacket. Jax was his right hand, a man who'd been with him since before the scar. Report, Silas said, his voice quiet. The two in the alley are low-level contractors, Jax said, his voice all business. The one who hired them is exactly who you thought, Deacon Marr. Silas's jaw tightened. He's a known soldier for the Hollow Crown, Jax continued. He's the primary enforcer for their loan sharking book, run exclusively through Baylight Trust, the woman, Harlow Vega. She missed 2 payments on a $3,000 crisis loan she took out 6 months ago for her mother's medical bills. Baylight doubled the vigorish, then sold the debt to Marr's collection sheet. Silas stared at the second-floor window of apartment 2B. He'd seen the light on. He'd seen the shadows move. He'd seen the blind twitch. So they send a 2-man team to break her kneecaps. For $3,000. The disgust in his voice was cold. It's a message, boss, to the whole neighborhood. Marr wants everyone to know Baylight doesn't bluff. And what message do we send, Jax? Jax smiled, a thin, feral expression. I've got 2 men ready. We can have Marr in a trunk before sunrise. We'll drop what's left of him on the Hollow Crown's front doorstep. Silas shook his head. No, not the old way. He had learned. Violence was loud. It was messy. It splattered. It got on people who didn't deserve it. This isn't about Marr, Silas said. It's about her. Marr is just a symptom. Baylight is the disease. We can't protect her if she's still chained to them. Find our shell corporation, Stormline Capital, the one we use for real estate. Jax frowned. Stormline, what about it? By 9 a.m. tomorrow, Stormline Capital is to purchase Mrs. Vega's debt from Baylight Trust. Pay the full, inflated amount. I want the transfer clean, legal, and ironclad. I want Baylight's name off every piece of paper she owns. Sever the link permanently. Jax understood. He nodded, impressed. And the new terms, for her. The new terms are 0% interest, payable whenever she can. And Jax, she doesn't find out it was us, not ever. Understood. Boss. Jax got out of the car, melting back into the rainy darkness. Silas stayed. He watched for another 10 minutes. Inside apartment 2B. I finished washing the diner grease off the plastic dinosaur container. I set it on the rack to dry for Evan's lunch tomorrow. I walked through the dark living room, past my mother sleeping in her chair, past my son dreaming of baseball. I went to the window one last time. I pulled the blind back. The black coupe was still there. I was about to let the blind fall to shut out the night and the suit jacket trouble when the car's right turn signal flashed. Once, twice, a soft amber blink. It wasn't a signal to turn. It was a signal to me. Then, the engine rumbled to life, quiet and powerful. The car pulled away from the curb, its taillights disappearing toward the harbor. I let the blind go. I stood in the dark, my hand on the cold glass, my knee throbbing to the rhythm of the rain. I didn't feel safe, but for the first time that night, I didn't feel entirely alone. The morning light was the color of dirty dishwater, filtering through the reinforced glass of the Rookhaven Community Bank. My knee throbbed with every step on the cold marble floor. I'd counted the tips from my apron 3 times. $94. I was here to offer a minimum payment on the Baylight Trust loan, a $100 gesture of goodwill I couldn't afford, just to keep the wolves from the door. I waited in line for 10 minutes, the $94 clutched in my hand, my apology already rehearsed. When I got to the window, the teller, a young woman named Brenda who I'd gone to high school with, gave me a strained smile. "Hey, Harlow, rough night." "You could say that. I need to make a payment on my account with Baylight Trust. The reference number is..." Brenda held up a hand, already typing. "Vega, right, Harlow, M." She frowned at her screen, her chewing gum freezing mid-chew. "What is it?" My stomach tightened. Did they already assign it? I just need another week. I can get a double shift. "No. Harlow, that's not it." She clicked her mouse a few more times. "This account, it's closed." Closed. The floor seemed to drop. Closed meant it was sold. Sold to someone worse than Deacon Marr. Someone who wouldn't send 2 thugs. Someone who might send... "It was paid," Brenda whispered, leaning closer to the glass partition. "In full, this morning at 9 a.m., the entire balance." I stared at her. Paid by who I didn't pay it. It was a wire transfer from a holding company. Let me see. Stormline Capital. The name meant nothing to me. It sounded cold, corporate, and terrifying. What are the terms? Who are they? Where do I send payments now? Brenda looked left and right, then hit the print button. A single sheet of paper slid out of her thermal printer. She passed it to me under the slot. "This is the weird part. Harlow, I've never seen this. The new loan terms, the interest rate is 0%, and the payment schedule is listed as flexible pending client stability. That's not a thing." I read the words, 0% flexible. This wasn't a loan transfer. It was a miracle. Or it was a trap. In Rookhaven, they were usually the same thing. "Who did this?" I asked again, my voice barely a whisper. "I have no idea, but it's legal. Look at the seal." She pointed to the bottom of the page, an embossed, complex eagle clutching a set of scales. It was certified and brokered by the Interstate Integrity Bureau, the IIB. It's as official as it gets. Harlow, whoever Stormline Capital is, they just saved you. I folded the paper, my hand shaking. The $94 felt heavy and useless in my pocket. I didn't feel saved. I felt owned. The IEB, it sounded like something you couldn't run from. I walked out of the bank, the gray sky pressing down, my mind racing. The man in the dark coat, The black coupe. The man who pays the price. Far across town, on Pier 19, the water of the harbor was a flat, polluted gray. Silas Caravello stood in his office, a minimalist space of steel and old wood, looking at the same eagle emblem on his own monitor. Mara Quill sat across from him, a laptop open, her fingers flying across the keys. She was a forensic accountant, the only one Silas trusted. She dressed in sharp, sterile suits and saw the world in ledgers and liabilities. Baylight is just the storefront. Silas, she said, not looking up. It's the public-facing vacuum cleaner. The real engine is the Hollow Crown outfit. They're washing every dollar through a decentralized wallet network. It's called Fenrir. The debt is transferred, Silas said, his voice flat. He was watching a live feed on a secondary monitor, a grainy, high-angle shot of a warehouse alley. Yes, your forgery of the IIB seal was excellent, almost too good. Mara stopped typing and looked at him. And that's the problem. The real IIB is compromised, has been for years. It's rotten with Hollow Crown assets. They want you to move on Baylight. They're waiting for it. An intercom on Silas's desk buzzed. Boss, Jax Romano's voice crackled through. I've got eyes on Deacon Marr. He's not at Baylight. He's spending his afternoons at Warehouse 7, by the old rail spur, using the back entrance. It's listed as Rook's Boxing Gym. Silas's eyes narrowed. He looked at the live feed. It was the same alley. He's there now. Looks like he's meeting someone. Not just gym rats. These are suits. Stay on him, Silas ordered. He clicked off the intercom. Warehouse 7, Mara said, already typing the address. Rook's Boxing. That's their clubhouse. And, according to these Fenrir traces, it's also their physical vault. I made it back to the apartment, my mind a fog of suspicion. The paper from the bank felt toxic in my pocket. I showed it to Rosie, who just crossed herself and said, It's an angel. Mija. I didn't believe in angels. I believed in strings. I was cleaning Evan's math book, erasing the graphite smear from last night when my burner phone, the one I used for emergencies, rang. It was a blocked number. I picked it up. Hello. Silence. Then a voice, digitally altered, like dragging metal across a chalkboard. Mrs. Harlow Vega. Who is this? We see your debt problems magically disappeared. A very generous gift. The voice was mocking, cold. Favors like that, from friends in high places. They require repayment, an expression of gratitude. My blood froze. I don't know what you're talking about. You just received an invitation. We need a new server for the private lounge at Rook's Boxing Gym, Warehouse 7. Be there tonight, 8 o'clock. Don't be late. The implication was not subtle. It was a lead pipe, a server. And if I don't, I tried to keep my voice steady. Deacon Marr was just supposed to scare you. The next people we send, they won't be so polite, and they know where your mother sleeps. They know where your son plays. The line clicked dead. I threw the phone. It hit the drywall, skittering to the floor. This was the trap. The man in the black coat, Silas, hadn't saved me. He had bought me. He had bought my debt to make me his. And now his enemies thought I was part of his world. I grabbed my coat. Ma, watch Evan. I'll be back. Where are you going? To the police. I was halfway down the stairs, my hand on the rusted railing, when I stopped. The police. What would I tell them? That an anonymous company paid my debt and an anonymous caller threatened me. They would laugh me out of the precinct. And then I remembered the paper in my pocket. The Interstate Integrity Bureau, the official seal. The text from my manager, the Urban Security Inspectorate. The city wasn't just corrupt, it was complicit. Who do you report a crime to when the criminals and the cops cash their checks at the same bank? I turned around, defeated, and walked back up the stairs. My phone was buzzing on the floor where I'd thrown it. A text message, an unknown number. It contained only 5 words. Don't go alone tonight. My fingers were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. It was him, the man from the alley, my savior, my owner. I typed back a reply, my thumb striking the screen. I don't need a guardian. On Pier 19, Silas read the text. He didn't smile. "She's angry," Mara said, watching him. "And she's right to be. You just painted a target on her. The Hollow Crown thinks she's your new asset. That's why they called her to Warehouse 7. It's a trap. Silas. For her. To get to you." "I took the chain off," Silas said, his voice low. "And you put a spotlight on. The IAB is waiting. If you send Jax and your men in there to bust up the place, the IAB will raid you. They'll claim the Mariner Syndicate is warring over territory. And they'll discover the Fenrir data they already have, and they will pin the whole network on you. You'll be locked up before dawn." Silas looked at the screen, at the text from Harlow. "I don't need a guardian." "She's right," he said. "She doesn't need a guardian. She needs a weapon." He turned away from the window, his mind set, "So we don't use violence. We use the law, or at least the appearance of it." He tapped the Stormline Capital contract on his desk. "We are the legal creditors, Baylight, and by extension their parent, Hollow Crown, is the debtor, and Warehouse 7 isn't a boxing gym. It's an undocumented asset. It's their ghost bond vault." Mara caught his meaning. A slow, clinical smile spread on her face, a reversal. "You're not going to attack them." "No," Silas said. "We're going to audit them. Jax won't go in with guns. He'll go in with a court order from the IAB, the one we just forged. We'll use our legal standing as Stormline Capital to force an emergency asset inspection at Warehouse 7. We will expose the ghost bonds, right under the IAB's compromised nose. Back in apartment 2B, I stared at the phone. I was trapped between two monsters, the one who threatened me and the one who claimed to protect me. I picked up the phone, but I didn't text Silas. I called the diner. "Sal, it's Harlow," I said, forcing my voice to be bright. "Listen, is that double shift still open for Friday and Saturday? If you need it." I listened for a moment. Yeah, everything's fine." I looked over at Evan, who was lining up plastic army men on the floor. "It's just, Evan's tryouts for the Ravens are coming up. The kid needs cleats." Silas Caravello stood in the darkness of his office, the phone call from his man at Maple Court already relayed. He knew she'd asked for the extra shifts. He knew she was still fighting, still trying to find her own way out. This plan would bring the fire closer to her than it had ever been. It might burn her. But he proceeded anyway. You don't cut the branches of a diseased tree. You have to expose the root to the light, even if the light is blinding. And Baylight's roots ran all the way under Warehouse 7. Friday night tasted like battery acid. The diner clock read 11:30 p.m., and the double shift had scraped my nerves raw. Every time the bell over the door chimed, my shoulders seized. Sal had given me the extra hours, but he'd also given me nervous, pitying looks, which were worse. I'd ignored the text. "Don't go alone tonight." I was alone. That was the point. I wouldn't be leveraged. I wouldn't be bait. And I wouldn't be a pawn in a game played by men in $1,000 coats. Rosie and Evan were at her sister's apartment across town. A movie night I'd insisted on. It was the only way I could breathe. The rain was back, a steady, cold drizzle. The neon sign of the Ashbury Diner hissed, casting red and blue light on the wet pavement. I tucked my tip money, $112, a good haul deep into my jeans pocket, in the sleeve of my thin jacket. My fingers were wrapped around the cold, checkered grip of a small folding knife I'd bought at a pawn shop 2 years ago. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I didn't take the shortcut. I didn't take the main road. I took the service route, a winding street of warehouses and shipping depots that ran parallel to the harbor. It was lit, but barely. I made it 3 blocks. The sound of the engines came first, too loud, too fast, echoing off the corrugated metal walls of the warehouses. They weren't behind me. They were ahead, cutting me off. 2 heavy-duty pickup trucks, their grills blacked out, no license plates. They squealed onto the street from an adjoining access road, sliding on the wet asphalt to block the intersection near Breyer and Sons, the old lumber yard. Their headlights pinned me, blinding me, turning me into a specimen on a slide. I stopped, my hand tightening on the knife in my sleeve. I didn't pull it. Not yet. The driver's side door of the lead truck opened. Deacon Marr climbed out. He wasn't smiling this time. His face was a bruised, swollen mask of fury from his encounter in the alley. He wore a heavy canvas jacket, and he was cracking his knuckles. "You're a hard woman to schedule a meeting with. Harlow," he called out, his voice rough, "you ignored the invitation? That's rude." The other truck's doors opened. 4 more men, all built like refrigerators, fanned out, creating a half circle. They were holding pipes and tire irons. "I'm not interested in a meeting. Deacon." "That's the thing about Baylight," he said, taking a step toward me. "They don't really care if you're interested." He took another step. I took one back, my heel hitting a puddle. "You should have just come to the club. We would have been nice. At first." "Get out of my way." "Not gonna happen." He lunged. He was fast for a big man, but I was faster. I'd spent 6 weeks at a free self-defense class at the Astor Parish Church, a class taught by a tired ex-cop. It wasn't about winning. It was about creating an opening to run. As Deacon grabbed for my jacket, I didn't pull away. I stepped into the move and drove my booted foot straight into the side of his right knee, the exact spot the instructor had called the hinge. I felt the joint give, a sickening pop. Deacon roared, a sound of pure agony, and his grip on my jacket tore loose as he crumpled. It bought me half a second. Not enough. The other 4 were moving in. Then, from the shadows of the lumber yard, 3 things happened at once. A black sedan, darker than the shadows it came from, slid into the intersection from behind the trucks, its engine a low growl. A motorcycle, just as black, shot out from the alleyway to my left, its tires spraying water. From my right, from the loading dock of Breyer & Sons, a man in a long coat stepped into the light. Silas Caravello. The trap had been reversed. Silas didn't look at me. His eyes were on the 4 men. Jax. The man from the sedan, Jax Romano, moved with brutal efficiency. He took the 2 on the right, using a short, weighted baton that appeared in his hand. It was a dance of strikes and blocks, fluid and precise. The rider on the motorcycle, a woman in sleek black leathers, pulled her bike into a slide, using the machine itself as a weapon. Separating the other 2, one man swung his pipe at her. She ducked under it, the engine roaring, and kicked his leg out from under him. It was a pincer move, a perfect triangle, with me in the protected center. Deacon Marr was trying to get up, his face purple with rage, pulling a glint of metal from his waistband. Silas was already moving. He saw the glint. He sidestepped a wild swing from the last man standing, an iron pipe that whistled through the air where his head had been. Silas didn't counter. He just kept moving toward Deacon, dodging the blow like it was an inconvenience. Harlow Silas's voice cut through the chaos. He threw something. It spun through the air, glinting in the neon light. I caught it instinctively, a heavy-duty zip tie, already looped. I understood. I lunged at Deacon, who was still trying to raise his weapon, his leg useless beneath him. I slammed his gun hand against the side of the truck, the metal clattering on the asphalt. Before he could recover, I cinched the zip tie around his wrist, yanking it tight, then looped the other end through the truck's door handle. I pulled it tight, the plastic ratcheting shut, binding him to the vehicle. He was neutralized. It was over in less than 30 seconds. 4 men were down, groaning. Deacon was screaming curses, chained to his own truck. Jax calmly walked back to the sedan. The woman on the bike, Nessa Cade, killed her engine. Silas finally looked at me. He was breathing easily, not a hair out of place. He glanced at the zip tie, then at my face. Good instincts. And then we heard it, wailing, high-pitched, and close. Sirens, not regular cops. This was the heavy-duty warble of the Rookhaven Special Response Team. They were tipped off. Jax yelled from the sedan. It was a setup. For us. Silas's eyes went hard. Nessa. The woman on the bike nodded. She reached into a saddlebag and threw a small, black canister into the middle of the intersection. It erupted in a thick, white cloud of smoke. It wasn't tear gas, it was military-grade concealment. The world dissolved into white vapor. "Move! Harlow! Now!" Silas ordered, his hand grabbing my arm. It wasn't a request. He pulled me not toward the street, but through the lumber yard, through a gap in a chain-link fence I never knew existed. Jax was right behind us. We ran, the smoke and the sound of the approaching sirens fading. He led me through a maze of abandoned buildings, ending at a rusted-out section of elevated railway. A black utility vehicle, a different one, was waiting in the shadows beneath the tracks. Nessa was already there, the motorcycle nowhere in sight. She was in the driver's seat, the engine humming. Silas pushed me into the back and slid in beside me. Jax took the front passenger seat. The doors clicked shut, plunging us into an insulated, terrifying silence. The vehicle pulled away smoothly, disappearing into the city's industrial underbelly. We drove for 5 minutes without speaking. The SUV was clean, anonymous, and smelled faintly of leather and ozone. I found my voice first. It was shaking, but cold. "I don't belong here. I am not one of you." Silas turned to me. The dim lights of the passing harbor filtered in, casting his face in shadow and light. "No, you're not," he said, his voice quiet. "You belong in a safe place, with your son. The rest is my concern." "Your concern? That was your fault. That trap was for you. They used me to get to you. You put that target on my back when you bought my debt." "I took the chain off your ankle," he countered, his voice sharp. "And you put a leash around my neck. Why me? It's $3,000. You don't do this for $3,000. He was silent for a long moment, watching the ruined piers of Rookhaven glide by. "It was never about the money," he said finally. Then what I demanded? 3 weeks ago, my people intercepted a communication from the Hollow Crown. It was a disposal order, a low-level hit, subcontracted out to be handled quietly. The target was a waitress at the Ashbury Diner. My breath caught. "They wanted you gone, Harlow, but they didn't want it to look like a hit. They wanted Deacon Marr to harass you, to push you, until you broke. They wanted you to run, or to be found in the harbor. A tragic accident, a single mother who couldn't take the pressure. The debt was just the excuse." "I don't understand," I whispered, my anger dissolving into a cold, creeping dread. "Why, I don't know these people. I don't know the Hollow Crown." Silas looked at me, his eyes holding mine. "You used to, 3 years ago, you worked, part-time, as a data entry clerk for a temp agency." "I did, for maybe 6 months, just to pay for Evan's daycare. It was a financial group." "Baylight Trust," Silas finished. I nodded, the memory foggy. "Yeah, Baylight. I just entered numbers, spreadsheets. It was for some kind of Baylight Scholarship Fund." The moment I said the words, I knew. The numbers that never added up, the columns of donations that had no source, the recipients who all had addresses that traced back to empty lots. It was a shell. I breathed, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. I was inputting the data for a ghost fund. I was helping them wash it. "You didn't know," Silas said. "It wasn't a question. You were just a temp. But you saw the raw data. You saw the names, the routing numbers. You're a loose end, Harlow, the only one left who wasn't on their payroll. They're cleaning house. And you were at the top of the list." The vehicle slowed, turning into a discreet underground garage. "The lantern," Silas said, as the garage door rolled shut behind us. "It's a small hotel. Quiet. You'll be safe here. Just for tonight." He got out of the car, but I didn't move. My entire life had just been rewritten. The last 3 years weren't about me failing to pay a debt. They were about me being a witness to a crime I didn't even know I'd seen. I looked at his outstretched hand, the same one he'd offered me in the alley. "My son," I said, my voice hollow. "He and your mother are already safe," Jack said from the front seat. "A friend of ours, a plainclothes associate, is with them. He'll be there until you give the all clear." I nodded. Just for Evan. I would accept the help. Just for Evan, I would go inside, I would bolt the door, and in the morning, I would take my son and my mother and we would disappear. I took his hand. It was warm and steady, and it pulled me up out of the darkness. Room 602 of the Lantern was clean, anonymous, and smelled of lemon polish and old carpet. Silas closed the door, the heavy lock clicking shut with a sound of profound finality. It was the sound of a sanctuary and the sound of a cage. We stood in the dark. The only light came from the gap beneath the curtains, a sliver of the city's sickly orange glow. Then, the single lamp on the desk flickered, once, twice. The building's old wiring groaned, and the room plunged into absolute blackness. I jumped, a small, involuntary gasp escaping me. The storm, which had been a drizzle, was now rattling the windows. I heard Silas move, not in panic, but with purpose. A scrape, the click of a lighter, a small, steady flame bloomed in the center of the room. He was lighting the thick decorative candle on the minibar tray. The flame grew, pushing the shadows back, painting the beige walls in flickering gold. His face was chiseled by the light, all hard angles and deep shadows. "They cut the power to the grid," he said, his voice calm. "It's the storm, not them." I nodded, though I wasn't sure I believed him. I went into the small bathroom, leaving the door open for the candlelight. I needed to see the damage. My knee, the one I'd scraped in the alley, had been wrenched again in the fight. I'd torn the bandage off. I sat on the edge of the tub, running a damp washcloth over the raw skin, hissing as the hotel soap stung the wound. He appeared in the doorway, a shadow filling the frame. He said nothing. He just reached past me, placing a small, flat box on the sink counter. It wasn't a cheap, plastic-wrapped hotel first aid kit. It was a box of high-grade butterfly bandages and sterile gauze pads, the good stuff. I looked up at him, my hand trembling slightly. "You think of everything." "I try." I finished cleaning the wound and applied the new bandage. It was strange, this quiet intimacy, more unsettling than the violence in the street. I walked back into the main room, the candle casting our shadows, huge and distorted, onto the walls. I sat on the edge of the stiff, chain hotel armchair. He remained standing by the window, looking out at the rain-swept darkness of Rookhaven. "I hate this," I whispered. The words pulled from me. "I hate this feeling, running, hiding, knowing that my son, knowing I have to lie to my own mother to keep them safe. I hate feeling like prey." He turned from the window, his face unreadable in the low light. "I know the feeling," he said, his voice lower than I'd ever heard it. "When I was young, just starting, I was arrogant. I wanted to make a name, to prove I was smarter than my predecessors. I ordered a purge of a rival crew, a clean sweep." He paused, his eyes focused on something far beyond the hotel room. "My intel was bad. The target wasn't there, but my sister was... Elena, she was visiting a friend in the wrong building. She wasn't in the business, she was just... good. She was a civilian, she was innocent." The silence in the room was heavier than the storm. "I made a mistake, a calculation, and she paid the price for it. I promised myself that night. Never again, no more innocence, no matter the cost." He looked at me, and for the first time, I didn't see a mafia boss. I saw a man defined by a single devastating failure. I stood up, drawn by the confession. I stopped just inches from him. We were two people, trapped in a dark room, surrounded by enemies, and bonded by the ghosts of people we were trying to protect. I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Our shoulders brushed. He looked down at the new, white bandage on my knee. "Does it hurt?" he asked. The question was so simple, so human. It undid me. I looked up, meeting his dark, intense gaze. "Only if you leave." The air crackled. It wasn't the storm. It was us. He didn't move. Not at first. He just watched me, searching my face, as if asking permission. I didn't look away. I didn't back down. Then, slowly, he raised a hand, not to my face, but to my shoulder, his fingers brushing my collarbone. His touch was electric, a jolt of warmth that spread straight to my core. I didn't pull back. I leaned into it. His other hand came up, framing my face. his thumb gently tracing the line of my jaw, and then he kissed me. It wasn't a kiss of violence or possession. It was a kiss of shared desperation, of finding an anchor in a hurricane. It was slow and deep, and it tasted of the rain and the night, my heart, which had been hammering in fear, now hammered for an entirely different reason. It was an ache, a deep, painful pulse that I felt in my chest and my throat. My jacket, still damp from the street, fell from my shoulders, pooling on the chair behind me. My hands, which had been clenched into fists, uncurled. I raised them, my fingers tangling in the thick hair at the nape of his neck. His lips left mine, moving to my jaw, then to the sensitive pulse point on my neck. My breath hitched, a small, broken sound. I could feel his heart pounding against my ribs, a rhythm that matched my own. He moved, lifting me as if I weighed nothing, and sat me on the wide, solid windowsill. The cold of the glass seeped through my thin shirt, and the rain drummed against the window just behind my back, a wild percussion to the sudden, quiet fire in the room. He pulled back then, just an inch, his forehead resting against mine. His breathing was unsteady. He looked directly into my eyes, the candlelight reflecting in their depths. His voice was a low, rough whisper. "Harlow, are you sure?" This was not the demand of an owner. It was the question of a man. I didn't just nod. I found my voice. Yes. I closed the small space between us, pulling him back. The candle flame guttered, casting the silhouette of his shoulders against the wall. My hand stark and pale against the dark fabric of his shirt. The world outside dissolved into the sound of the rain, the only reality this small, flickering space. Later, the storm had quieted to a steady drumming. We were sitting on the floor, our backs against the bed, the hotel blanket draped over our shoulders. The candle was burning low. I had never felt so calm or so terrified. "Stormline Capital," I said into the darkness. It wasn't a question. He tensed beside me. Yes. The calm shattered. I pulled away, the blanket falling from my shoulders. "So it was you. All of it. You lied to me. You took the chain from Baylight and you put your own on me. You bought me. Silas." "No," he said, his voice firm. He didn't try to touch me. He just held his ground. "I separated you. I had to. It was the only way to legally sever Baylight's claim. And what's your claim? 0% interest. Flexible payments. What's the catch? Silas, when do you come to collect?" "I don't." He pulled out his phone, the screen illuminating his face. He typed for a moment and handed it to me. It was the digital contract, the one I'd signed, but he'd scrolled down to a series of clauses I had never seen. Clause 7A, in the event of the primary mortgagee's Harlow Vega incapacitation or death, all outstanding debt is immediately forgiven. Clause 7B, in such an event, title of apartment 2B, Maple Court, transfers in full to Rose Vega. Clause 7C, a protected trust funded by Stormline Capital will be activated, providing for the full education and living expenses of Evan Vega until the age of 25. I read it, and I read it again. This wasn't a leash. It was a life raft. It was a life insurance policy. He hadn't just been protecting me for the night. He had been protecting Evan for the rest of his life. The anger drained out of me, leaving me weak. Before I could speak, a different sound filled the room, a sharp, insistent vibration. It wasn't the phone I was holding. It was another one, which he pulled from the inside pocket of his coat. He glanced at the screen. The calm, steady man I had just been with was gone. The boss was back. "It's Mara," he said, his voice clipped. "There's a leak. Someone inside my organization is talking to the IB. "What does that mean?" "It means the trap we set at the warehouse was compromised. The IEB isn't just ignoring the Hollow Crown. They're working with them. They're preparing a joint task force, using my forged audit as the pretext. They aren't going to raid Baylight." He stood up, walking to the window. "They're planning to raid the Mariner Syndicate. They're coming for me." I stood up, my mind racing. If they took Silas, the protection was gone. The contract, the trust, all of it would be buried in an evidence locker. Deacon Marr would be back before morning. I thought of the scholarship fund, Scholar Bright, the meaningless columns, the ghost addresses. I can help, I said. He turned, looking at me. The Baylight data, I said, my voice stronger. I remember it. I remember the account structures. I still have my old pay stubs from the temp agency, tucked in my tax file. They have the project codes on them. It's not just a memory. Silas, I can recreate the flow of that money. I can prove Scholar Bright was a front. He watched me, a new, calculating light in his eyes. He wasn't looking at a victim anymore. He was looking at a weapon. You lead the financials, he said. Mara can analyze what you find. I'll handle the protection. I walked over to him. Then we make a promise. Right now. What promise? No more secrets. No more protecting me by lying to me. You tell me everything. I tell you everything. That's the only way this works. Otherwise, I take my son and I run, and I will take my chances. He held my gaze for a long time. Then he nodded. No more secrets. He put his hand out, not in a caress, but palm up. A contract. I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine. Strong and warm. It wasn't a handshake. It was an oath. The tactical center of the Mariner Syndicate wasn't the high-tech office. It was a concrete-walled sub-basement beneath Pier 19, designed to withstand a direct hit. It smelled of ozone, old concrete, and hot electronics. It was here that our war began. They think we're using muscle, Silas said, his voice echoing slightly in the small room. He, Mara, Jax, Nessa, and I were crowded around a holographic projector. They're expecting a war for territory. We aren't going to give it to them. Mara Quill, all sharp angles and sharper intellect, tapped a key. A schematic of the Fenrir network appeared in the air. This is where they live, but it's insulated. We can't crack it from the outside without tripping a dozen dead man switches. But I was already inside. I said, stepping forward, I'd spent the last 4 hours with Mara. My old pay stubs spread out, my memory agonizingly retracing data entry shifts from 3 years ago. I was employee 7749, project code Scholar Bright. I didn't just input the ghost donations. I cross-referenced the payouts. I remember the structure. I can rebuild it. Mara nodded, a look of clinical respect in her eyes. And she's right. Her memory of the Scholar Bright project code is the skeleton key. The Hollow Crown got sloppy. They built their entire laundering infrastructure on top of that original, forgotten scholarship fund. They just walled it off. So we don't crack the safe, Silas concluded. We use her key to walk in the front door. Not quite, Mara said. We create a new front door. Her fingers flew. A new data packet materialized on the projection. This is our lure, a bearer bond package, digitally watermarked, worth $5 million. It's a ghost. It doesn't really exist, but I've structured it using the exact Scholar Bright protocols Harlow remembered. To their system, it will look like a lost asset, a forgotten entry from the old fund. They'll bite, Jack said, his arms crossed. They're greedy. They'll do more than bite, Mara said. They'll ingest it. They'll move it off their public-facing server and into their deep vault. And when they do, she added a final line of code to the package, this digital tracer activates. It won't just tell us where the vault is. It will map the entire network path it takes to get there. It will give us the blueprint to Fenrir. The plan settled. Nessa would spend the day watching Warehouse 7, planting microcameras disguised as screwheads on the utility poles. Jax would prepare a delivery van, stripped of all identification, to deliver the package, a hard drive in a locked briefcase, to Deacon Marr's front. While they prepared the technicals, Silas handled the politics. He left, not in the black coupe, but in a nondescript gray sedan. He drove to a state building on the other side of the river, a place of gray carpets and fluorescent lights. He wasn't meeting the IB. He was meeting the chairwoman of the East Coast Anti-Corruption Commission, the EACC, a new, temporary task force established by the governor, hungry and, for the moment, clean. I wasn't there, but Silas told me every word. He didn't offer them a mob war. He offered them a white-collar crime. The Hollow Crown outfit is running a multi-million-dollar laundering operation through Baylight Trust, he stated, placing a single, clean file on the table. In 2 hours, I will have proof of their central vault and the names of the IIB agents protecting them. The chairwoman was skeptical. And you, Mr. Caravello, you're doing this out of civic duty. I'm doing it because they put a target on a civilian, Silas said, his voice cold. I give you the network, the bank, and the dirty agents. In exchange, you give me one thing full, blanket immunity for the witness who broke the case. She is a single mother. She was an unknowing participant, and her name will never appear in a single file. She is a ghost. Do we have a deal? They had a deal. My part was harder. I sat in the sub-basement, a secure satellite phone in my hand, and called my mother. Ma, hi. Harlow Mija, are you okay? We had a wonderful time at Angie's. Evan beat his cousins at that video game. That's great, Ma. That's great. My throat was tight. Listen, I need you to do something for me. You know the summer day camp at the Astor Parish Church? The one with the nice nuns, of course. But Harlow, that's expensive. We can't... I can... I said, forcing a brightness I didn't feel. I got a huge bonus at the diner. A private party. They tipped like crazy. I want you to take Evan. Sign him up for the week. Starting tomorrow. Tomorrow, but that's Saturday. They run a weekend program. Please, Ma, I want you to take him, and I want you to stay with him. Be a volunteer. Help them hand out the juice. I need to work a few doubles, and I don't want you and Evan cooped up in that apartment. It's my treat. Okay. The silence on the line was heavy. Rosie Vega was not a stupid woman. She knew the sound of my voice when I was lying. You be safe, Harlow, she whispered. Whatever this is, you be safe for him. I will, Ma, I promise. I hung up. The first and most important piece was safe. At 4 p.m., the heist began. Nessa's voice crackled in my earpiece. We're live. I'm in position. I have eyes on the back entrance of Warehouse 7. My screen lit up with feeds from 3 different cameras. Grainy, but clear. Jax is approaching, Nessa narrated. We watched Jax, dressed as a bonded courier, walk up to the steel door of the boxing gym. He was scanned by a brute in a stained tank top. He handed over the briefcase. He's taking it, I whispered. We watched the brute carry the case inside. 10 minutes passed. My heart was in my throat. Deacon Marr is on site, Nessa said. He just arrived in his truck. He's going inside now. Another 5 minutes. Mara's screen next to me, the one monitoring the tracer, suddenly flashed red. We're active. He opened the package. He's accessed the data. He's smart. What Silas demanded. He's not keeping it at the warehouse, Mara said, her fingers flying. He's routing it. The tracer is moving through the Fenrir network. It's fast. It's leaving the warehouse. It's tunneling under the harbor. And it just came to rest. Crown Line Avenue, the main headquarters of Baylight Trust, the basement server room. He sent it home, Silas said, a thin smile touching his lips. He thought it was too valuable for the clubhouse. He sent it to the bank. He just confirmed the link for us. Jax, Nessa, pull back. Phase 1 is complete. Boss! Jax's voice suddenly cut in, tense. We have a problem. Big problem. IIB. 3 vans, full tactical. They just blocked the entrance to the pier. My blood ran cold. They were here. Silas didn't even flinch. He looked at his watch. Right on time. They got the tip about our imminent attack on Warehouse 7, and, as predicted, our leak told them we'd be staging from here. They're breaching the gate, Jax said. Let them, Silas said calmly. He gestured to the empty sub-basement, the humming servers. They'll find an empty headquarters. A few ghost programs running. By the time they figure out the diversion, we'll be gone. He turned to me. Phase 2. We didn't leave by the door. We left through a tunnel that opened onto a private water inlet. Nessa was waiting with a sleek, dark speedboat. 20 minutes later, we were standing in the polished marble lobby of the Baylight Trust Building on Crown Line Avenue. It was 5:30 p.m. The bank was closed to the public, but the security desk was still manned. Silas, Jax and I were not in tactical gear. We were in power suits. I wore a severe black blazer Mara had provided, my hair pulled back, a tablet in my hand. I looked like a corporate auditor. Silas strode to the desk. Silas Caravello, Stormline Capital. We're here for the emergency asset inspection, authorized by the IIB. Reference 401A. You'll find our credentials are in order. We need access to your basement server room. Now. The guard, seeing the IIB seal the one Mara had forged, the one the real IIB was currently honoring by raiding the wrong building, swallowed hard and buzzed us through. The basement was cold, sterile, and quiet, rows of humming servers. Mara, we're in, Silas said into his earpiece. The tracer is straight ahead, her voice came back, behind that fireproof wall. Jax used a pry bar. The wall was fake. Behind it was not a server. It was a room, a large, brightly lit, windowless room, and it wasn't new. It was old. It was filled with 8 long tables, each with a money-counting machine, the old-fashioned, clattering kind. Stacks of cash, hundreds, 50s, 20s were piled high, waiting to be counted, sorted and bundled. My God, I whispered. This wasn't just a digital network. This was the physical wash. This was where the Hollow Crown scrubbed their street money before it ever became digital. This was the source. Mara, you seeing this? Silas asked. I see it, she said, her voice electric. It's beautiful. I'm in. I'm downloading the Fenrir core data. They've linked it all. I have the lists, the accounts, A shrill alarm cut her off. It wasn't the building alarm. It was a digital proximity alert from Mara's system. Silas Mara shouted in our ears. Internal breach. Someone just pinged our location to an outside server, an I2B server. They knew we were here. It's a trap. Jax drew his weapon, moving to cover the door. Silas pushed me behind one of the server racks. Who Silas demanded. The signal, Mara said, her voice tight with panic. It came from inside your own syndicate. The authorization code. It's from your legal counsel. The elevator at the far end of the basement dinged. The door slid open. A man in a perfectly tailored $3,000 suit stepped out. He was holding a slim, silver pistol. I knew him. I'd seen him at Pier 19, in Silas's office. It was Tobin Vale, Silas's lawyer, his most trusted advisor. I'm sorry, boss, Tobin said, his voice calm and reasonable, as if he were discussing a contract. The Hollow Crown's retainer is just cleaner, and they don't appreciate audits. He raised the pistol. He didn't aim it at Silas. He aimed it directly at me. She's the asset. Silas. She's the only one who can testify to what Scholar Bright really was. Drop your weapon, both of you. The silver pistol was steady in Tobin Vale's hand, but it was aimed at me. The small, dark circle of the barrel looked like a tunnel. Drop your weapon, Silas, both of you, Tobin said, his voice as calm as if he were negotiating a lease. Jax, you too, on the floor. Kick them over. Silas's eyes met mine. In that split second, I saw no fear. I saw calculation. He saw Tobin's mistake. Tobin thought I was the leverage, the civilian weakness. Silas knew I was the only one in the room Tobin hadn't prepared for. Slowly, Silas unholstered his weapon and placed it on the concrete floor. Jax did the same, his face a mask of contempt. They slid the weapons toward the center of the room. Silas looked at me. He gave a single, sharp nod. The transfer of command was instant and absolute. The muscle had stood down. The mind was now in charge. My heart was a cold stone in my chest, but my voice was steady. You wrote the audit request yourself, didn't you? Tobin. The one that got us in here. Tobin's smile was thin, very clever Harlow. I used the IUB's own compromised servers to authorize it, knowing they'd use it as a pretext to trap Silas. Win-win. You used the Stormline Capital creditors contract as the base legal language. I pressed, stepping slightly away from the server rack, my hand clutching the tablet I'd carried in, the one you drafted for Silas to acquire my debt. His smile faltered. He didn't like me talking. What's your point? Waitress. My point, I said, my voice rising, echoing off the concrete, is Article 4, Section 2, the civil rescue provision. You put it in there yourself to give Stormline the broadest possible power. You probably copied and pasted it. You didn't even read it. I was talking to him, but I was speaking for the EACC cameras I knew were watching. It allows, I read from the tablet, the immediate securing of assets in the event of clear and present danger to community welfare or documented evidence of ongoing criminal enterprise. I lifted my chin, pointing not at Tobin, but at the massive, old-fashioned vault door behind the money-counting tables. This room is evidence of ongoing criminal enterprise. And that vault contains the proof. We are legally executing the civil rescue provision. That won't hold up in court, Tobin sneered. It doesn't have to. I shot back. It just has to open the door. I was speaking into my earpiece now, to the team that was listening. Nessa, are you on the network? Activate the remote override? Now. No, Tobin roared, swinging the gun away from me toward the vault's electronic keypad. He was too late. A heavy thunk echoed through the basement, followed by the high-pitched whine of pressurized hydraulics. The vault was not a prop. It was real. And it was opening. With a heavy groan, the 4-ton steel door slid sideways. Tobin froze. Silas and Jax stood perfectly still. The vault was not filled with cash. It was filled with shelves. Shelves of humming hard drives, and, on the back wall, rows of thick, leather-bound ledgers. The 2-column books, I whispered. The real accounting. The books that connected the Hollow Crown street cash to Baylight's clean investments. Mara, are you seeing this? Silas asked, his voice a low, satisfied rumble. We see it. Mara's voice crackled in our earpieces. Triumphant, the EACC has the live feed. We have it all. Baylight and Hollow Crown, names, dates, signed and dated. It's over. Tobin Vale understood. His leverage was gone. His betrayal was for nothing. He was just a man in a basement, a witness to the end of his own life. He raised the pistol, his hand shaking, a desperate, wild move, swinging it back towards Silas. He never had the chance. Jax was a blur, closing the 10-foot gap in an instant. It wasn't a fight, it was a retrieval. A sharp, brutal twist of Tobin's wrist. A crack of bone. The silver pistol clattered on the concrete. Jax slammed Tobin against the open vault door, his arm pinned behind his back. You talk too much. Counselor. He cinched a zip tie around Tobin's wrists, then another. Silas watched, his face grim. He didn't move. He didn't throw a single punch. He kept his hands clean. He had to. For the cameras. He had to let the law, twisted as it was, do the work. Uploading the full Fenrir package, Mara's voice said, a drumbeat in our ears. It's too big for the EACC server alone. I'm pushing it wide. Uploading to the North Atlantic Organized Crime Directorate's public database. It's time-stamped. It's mirrored. It is permanently in the public record. They can't bury it now. We were back in the sub-basement beneath Pier 19 less than 20 minutes later. The air was electric. We had won. We had exposed the root. Then, a high-pitched chime came from Jax's phone, a news alert. He read it aloud, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Rookhaven News 12. Breaking report. Massive police action at Pier 19 as INIB thwarts apparent armed takeover of Baylight Trust by the Mariner Syndicate, led by Silas Caravello. Sources report a hostage situation involving a bank employee. They're framing us. I breathed, staring at the headline. The IUB, compromised and exposed, was trying to take us all down with them. Silas looked at Mara. Now. Mara was already on a different phone, a secure line. Chairwoman, you have the full video package. The IIB just fired the first shot in a media war. You have 30 minutes to fire the last one, or this entire case dissolves. Release the counter-narrative. The next half hour was the strangest battle I had ever witnessed. We watched the local news feed. The IUB spokesperson was on screen, a grim-faced man in a tactical vest, talking about organized crime and violent incursions. Then, the broadcast cut, a new banner, EACC special briefing. The EACC chairwoman stood at a podium, her face stern. The information previously reported by the IIB is inaccurate. We are, at this moment, conducting a joint operation based on information provided by a protected whistleblower from inside Baylight Trust. She stepped aside. A massive screen behind her lit up. It was our feed. The world saw the cash room. They saw the money-counting machines. They saw the vault slide open, revealing the ledgers. And they saw Tobin Vale, Silas's own lawyer, holding a gun, before being cleanly disarmed by Jax. The narrative didn't just shift, it shattered. In 30 minutes, the story wasn't mob war. It was whistleblower and corruption. My burner phone rang, the one Silas had given me. I picked it up, expecting Mara or Nessa. Hello? There was no voice, only a sound, a high-pitched, wailing alarm, and beneath it, the deep, terrifying roar of a massive fire. A cold dread, heavier than anything I had felt in the alley, washed over me. I knew that sound. What is it? Silas asked, seeing my face. My voice was a hollow whisper, the lantern. Nessa confirmed it 2 minutes later, her voice tight with rage over the comms. It's gone, boss. Hollow Crown. They couldn't win the data war, so they reverted. They torched the place. Fire department says it was a professional job, accelerant on every floor. It's a total loss. I sank into a chair. Room 602, the candle, the promise, the safe house. It was ashes. It was a message, sent directly to me. We know where you were. Nowhere is safe. Silas put his hand on my shoulder. His touch wasn't comforting. It was a conduit for a cold, compressed fury that vibrated through his entire body. No more civilians, he said, his voice a vow of iron. This ends. For good. Mara's screen lit up. He's right. The EACC is drafting warrants for Baylight's entire board. The IIB is in chaos. The compromised agents are scrambling. But the clean ones are panicking. They're contacting me. They're offering to cooperate, to trade files for protection. Silas turned to the large illuminated map of Rookhaven on the wall. It's not enough. Victor Radek, the head of Hollow Crown, is still insulated. They'll sacrifice Baylight. They'll sacrifice Tobin. He'll cut the limb off to save the body. He tapped a location on the map, a sprawling industrial complex on the north side, near the river, the Lockridge textile mill. Mara and Harlow exposed the route, Silas said. Now, we cut the head. We're done with legal games. Tomorrow night, we perform a clean surgery. We're hitting their headquarters. We're taking Radek down ourselves. The map of the Lockridge textile mill was a spiderweb of old architecture and new security, spread across the steel table in the sub-basement. The air was still, heavy with the smell of ozone in the harbor. I wasn't a soldier, but I had been a temp. I knew how buildings like this breathed. I placed my finger on a junction box icon on the blueprint's northeast corner. Here, I said, my voice sharp in the quiet room. This is their primary electrical choke point. It's an old transformer, probably overloaded. They'll have their security server and the internal network wired to it. You kill this. You kill their eyes and their local data network, and half the lights on the east wing. Nessa Cade, her black leathers traded for a dark, practical uniform, nodded. She drew a red line on the map. Good, that's our window. We go in silent through the main roof access, but we don't leave the way we came. We leave through here. She tapped the west side of the building, the old dye vats. They're empty, and they drain directly to the Glass Harbor River. It's a straight drop to the water. I'll have the boat waiting. Jax, checking the charge on a set of high-frequency emitters, looked up. And while you're making your entrance, my team will be on the south perimeter. We're setting up these... He patted one of the speakers. At precisely 23:05, we light them up. It will sound like a freight train is derailing in their lobby. Every guard on site will run south. You'll have the north wing all to yourselves. Silas moved from the shadows, and he was holding something. It wasn't a weapon, it was a vest. Lightweight, sleek, and dark gray. It was designed to be worn under a jacket. He didn't offer to help me. He just handed it to me. I took it. The weight was surprising. A solid, reassuring pressure. I'd never held anything like it. I put it on, pulling the heavy Velcro straps tight across my ribs, the material conforming to my body. It felt like a second, stronger set of bones. I fastened the final strap and looked up at him. I'm not a glass doll. Silas. His eyes met mine, dark and steady. No, he said, his voice quiet. You're the sharp end. Our next stop was a small, soundproofed room. For an hour, I spoke into a high-fidelity recorder. I gave my name. I gave my temporary employee number. I detailed, from memory, the structure of the Scholar Bright Ghost Fund. I described the cash room at Baylight. I named Tobin Vale. I left nothing out. I was building a bullet made of words, a contingency in case I didn't get to fire it myself. Silas took the encrypted drive, a small, heavy object. This goes to the safest place I know, he said, the pneumatic locked vault beneath the altar at Astor Parish Church. If we don't walk out of that mill, this drive does. The EACC will have it by dawn. My burner phone rang. My heart stopped. Only one person had this number. I scrambled for it, my hand shaking as I hit the accept button. Ma, are you okay as Evan? We're fine. Mija, Rosie's voice was strained, trying to sound cheerful, and that scared me more than anything. We're fine, but someone else wants to talk to you. There was a fumbling sound, and then my entire world focused into a single, high-pitched, ecstatic shout. Mommy, Mommy, I made it. I'm on the team. I'm a Raven. Evan. His voice was pure joy, a sound so clean it didn't belong in this world of concrete and tactical maps. I made the team. Mommy, I ran fast and I caught the ball and the coach said, I have a great arm. I'm on the Rookhaven Ravens. I closed my eyes, leaning my forehead against the cold concrete wall. A single, hot tear escaped, tracing a path through the grime on my cheek. This was why. This was the light at the center of all the darkness. This was the only thing that mattered. Oh, baby, that's... My voice broke. I cleared my throat, forcing the steel back into it. That's amazing, Ev. I am so proud of you. Are you coming to the first game? It's next week. You gotta come. I'll be there, I said. The words of vow. I will be there. I promise. Now. Let me talk to Grandma again. I love you. Ev. I gave Rosie the final instructions, my voice hard again. They were to stay at my aunt's, not the church, not the apartment, until I called. I hung up, and the steel in my voice spread through my whole body. My fear didn't vanish, but it crystallized. It turned from a weakness into a weapon. The quiet before the storm found us on the flat roof of Pier 19. Hours later, the city was a smear of neon and fog across the water. The air was cold, but the coffee Silas had poured from a metal thermos was scalding hot. We sat on an old ventilation unit, our backs to the wind, our mugs warming our hands. Are we going to make it out of this? I asked the darkness. Silas was silent for a long time, watching the distant lights of the Glass Harbor Bridge. I don't make promises about the future, Harlow, he said, his voice low. It's the one thing I can't control. I learned that a long time ago. He turned, his profile sharp against the city glow. But I will make this promise. When it gets hard, when the fire comes and the walls start to buckle, I will not run. I will not leave you to face it alone. I took a sip of the bitter coffee. It burned all the way down. Then I won't run either. Footsteps on the gravel roof. Mara Quill joined us, a tactical tablet in her hand. She was all business. It's set, she said. The EACC is in place. They have 2 decommissioned ambulances staged 3 blocks from the mill. No lights, no sirens. Their orders are to create a perimeter and extract any non-combatants, specifically any night shift mill workers. If Radek or his men trigger a fire, they are on our comms channel, but they will not, under any circumstances, intervene. She held up a small, synchronized digital watch. The target is Fenrir Tier 3. This isn't just the accounts. This is Victor Radek's personal black book, his payroll of politicians, his kill lists, his offshore accounts. It's the brain. She looked at me, her eyes intense. The moment your tracker breaches their internal server, a timer begins. You will have exactly 22 minutes to get from the roof to the server, download the data, and get out. At minute 23, the entire database flash erases, permanently. No second chances, 22 minutes. The stakes were set. It was time. We were at the water inlet, the dark, sleek boat bumping gently against the tires of the dock. Jax and Nessa were already aboard, checking their gear. Silas stopped me just before I stepped down. "Harlow." He pressed something small and warm into my hand. I looked down. It was a small, worn piece of leather, folded and stitched shut with thick wax thread. A name was embossed on the surface, faded but readable Elena. "My sister," he said, his voice rough. She liked the harbor. She liked the smell of the salt. It's just a piece of her old sailing glove." He looked away, out toward the water, for luck. "Let it walk with you." I closed my hand around it. The leather was soft, shaped by a hand that was long gone. I nodded, my throat too tight for words. From the Glass Harbor River, a train horn sounded, a long, mournful blast that cut through the night. It was the signal. Silas looked at Jax, at Nessa, and then at me. His face was set. "Let's go." The boat's engine engaged with a near-silent hum, and we slid out of the pier into the dark. Man wind. The digital clock on my wrist read 23:08, 11:08 p.m. "We're in," I whispered. The server room of the Lockridge Mill was not the pristine, cold basement of Baylight. This was the heart. It was a hot, dark room, the walls lined with black, unmarked server towers, their fans roaring like a trapped jet engine. Mara Quill was beside me, her tactical tablet already patched into their system via a port I'd identified from the blueprints. "The firewall is down," she murmured, her face illuminated by the green glow of the screen. "I'm accessing the Scholar Bright root directory. I'm in... God, it's not just a fund." On her screen, the Fenrir Code bloomed, a terrifying map of corruption. It was a river of dirty money flowing from the mill, through Baylight and splitting into a dozen streams. One, the largest, flowed directly into a pack. "The Citizens for a Better Rookhaven Fund," I read, my blood running cold. "That's the re-election campaign for a local politician." Mara cut me off, her voice flat. "The name is redacted, hidden behind a triple-blind trust, but the money is there. We have the artery." 19 minutes. Silas's voice crackled in our earpieces. He was 2 floors below with Jax, providing overwatch. "I'm isolating the Tier 3 data." Mara said, "This is it, Harlow. Get that hardware key ready." I gripped the encrypted drive. My job was to plug it in, create a physical mirror, and get out. A sudden, high-pitched shriek echoed from the floor below. Not Jax's speakers. This was a different alarm. "Laser tripwire!" Jax's voice was a strained yell. "South corridor." They had a secondary system. It's silent, but it just activated the physical defenses. A deep, metallic groan shook the building. From the hallway outside the server room, a heavy steel roll-down door slammed into the concrete floor, sealing us in. "We're trapped," Mara said, not even looking up from her screen. They knew we'd come for this. Nessa Silas's voice was a command, not a question. "On it," Boss Nessa's voice replied, followed by the roar of a heavy truck engine. Through the server room's small, wire mesh window, I saw headlights, a heavy-duty flatbed truck, one that had been parked as set dressing near the loading dock, suddenly roared to life. It reversed, its tires smoking, and slammed into the main factory wall, just beside the sealed corridor. The building shook. Concrete dust rained from the ceiling. Nessa didn't just break the wall, she rammed the guide rail for the steel door, bending it, twisting the metal curtain and creating a 3-foot gap at the bottom. "Your exit is ready," Nessa said, her voice impossibly calm. "I'd suggest you use it." But as I looked down through the window, I saw them. Hollow-crowned soldiers, pouring from the lower levels, drawn by the crash. And leading them, wearing a heavy tactical vest over his street clothes, was Deacon Marr. He looked up, his bruised face a mask of pure hatred, and he saw me in the window. "Bitch," he screamed, his voice carrying even over the alarms. "Waitress, you're mine. You're dead." He and 2 others charged for the stairwell. "They're coming for you," Silas said in my ear. "Get the data. I'll handle the welcome party." We heard footsteps pounding up the metal stairs. Mara and I braced against the door, but it wasn't our fight. Silas and Jax met them on the landing. It was a blur of close-quarters combat, but Deacon was a new man. He was armored, and he was fueled by a singular, obsessive rage. He ignored Jax, plowing through him like a linebacker, his eyes fixed on the server room where I was. Silas intercepted him. The fight was not a clean, surgical strike. It was a brawl, spilling from the landing onto an old, narrow iron catwalk that spanned the factory's main floor, high above the silent looms. The factory was a maze of machinery and shadows. Silas was faster, more precise, but Deacon was wearing armor and swinging a heavy wrench like a battle axe. He was a berserker. "Got it," Mara yelled, her fingers flying. "The friends list is isolated. I'm routing it to your drive. Stand by for transfer." A clatter of metal rang out. I looked on the catwalk. Deacon had swung the wrench, catching Silas's arm. His pistol spun out of his grip, clattering over the edge and falling into the darkness below. Silas was unarmed. Deacon smiled, dropping the wrench, and pulled a combat knife from his boot. "Time to pay your bill," Deacon snarled, advancing on Silas. I didn't think. I ran. I burst from the server room, past Mara, and onto the catwalk. "Hey, Deacon." He turned, surprised. That was all I needed. I wasn't a fighter, but I was a survivor. And I remembered the lessons from the Astor Parish Church. As he turned, I didn't try to hit him. I grabbed the wrist of his knife hand. Just as the instructor had taught, I dropped my weight, pulling his arm straight, and twisted my hips, putting all my momentum onto his elbow joint, the arm bar, leverage. His armored vest made him top-heavy. My move, combined with his surprise, unbalanced him. His elbow didn't break, but he roared in pain, his grip on the knife loosening. He stumbled, his other arm windmilling for balance. His foot slipped on the greasy iron grate. He didn't fall far. He crashed hard into the wide nylon safety netting strung 10 feet below the catwalk, a relic from when the mill was operational. He was alive, tangled, and completely neutralized. Harlow Mara's voice was a scream. The countdown. 3 minutes. 3 minutes until total erasure. I scrambled back to the server room. My hands were shaking, slick with sweat. I fumbled with the hardware key. "Steady," Silas's voice said, right behind me. He was there, his hand on my back, a solid, grounding presence. I shoved the key into the main port. The screen flashed, mirroring Tier 3. "Do not remove." A progress bar appeared. It was agonizingly slow. "We're exposed," Jax yelled from the stairs. More of them coming from the west. A new sound, a series of loud pops from the factory floor below, and then smoke. Thick, acrid, white smoke, pouring up through the floor grates. "Phosphorus smoke," Silas yelled. "They're burning us out. Cover your faces." The smoke was instant, blinding, and it choked the air. Then the mill's ancient, faulty sprinklers kicked in. It wasn't a spray, it was a pathetic, rusty drizzle, turning the smoke into a caustic fog. The lights flickered, died, then came back on at half power. Fire alarms, loud and incessant, blared through the building. "Download complete," the screen flashed. I ripped the drive from the port. "Got it." "Go!" Silas grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the stairs. But the smoke was too thick. I choked, my lungs on fire. He didn't hesitate. He hooked one arm under my legs, the other around my back, and lifted me. He carried me down the stairs, Jax clearing the path as the mill dissolved into a nightmare of smoke, water, and noise. We ran for Nessa's escape route, the massive, truck-sized hole in the wall. We burst out into the night air, gasping, just as a convoy of vans, their lights flashing, screeched to a halt, boxing us in. It was the IEB, the compromised, furious IEB. On the ground, all of you, an agent in full tactical gear bellowed, his rifle aimed at Silas's chest. "Hands in the air. You are all under arrest." But before they could move in, 3 more sedans, unmarked, swerved in, cutting them off. The EACC. "Stand down, Agent," the EACC chairwoman yelled, stepping out of her car, flanked by her own team. "This is an active EACC-led operation." "This is an active crime scene," the IIB agent shouted back. "We have an officer-involved shooting at Pier 19 and a hostile takeover. These people are terrorists." It was chaos, a jurisdictional standoff, guns drawn in the middle of a burning factory yard. I watched the IIB agent's finger tighten on his trigger. He wanted Silas. He didn't care about the law. He cared about silencing the man who had exposed him. In that instant, Silas made a choice. He gently set me on my feet, and he raised both his hands, palms out, a clear sign of surrender. "It's over," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "Take me." He was giving himself up. He was sacrificing himself, drawing all the fire, so I could slip away in the confusion. "No," I said. "Harlow, run," he ordered, his back to me. I said no. I walked past him. I walked straight into the glare of the headlights, my legs shaking, but my back straight. I walked right up to the EACC chairwoman, past the stunned IUB agents. I held up the small, encrypted hardware drive, the files, the ho-so. "Are your cameras rolling?" I demanded. The chairwoman nodded, pointing to a small, body-worn camera on her agent. I held the drive up to the lens. "My name is Harlow Vega. I am the plaintiff. I am the primary witness in the Scholar Bright case. Every piece of evidence you need is on this drive, and I am turning it over, publicly, right now, as a protected whistleblower. Arrest them." The standoff froze. I had just checkmated them in front of witnesses. And then, a new light flickered, a massive industrial billboard, the kind that faced the highway, lit up. It wasn't showing an ad, it was showing a face. A man, older, in a perfectly tailored suit, looked down on us all. It was a live feed. Victor Radek, the head of the Hollow Crown. He was smiling. A spirited performance. "Mr. Caravello," his voice boomed over the industrial park. "Truly, but you have something that belongs to me, and you have a woman who knows too much." His smile widened. "So let's end the games. Tomorrow night, midnight, the Crown Line parking garage, top floor. You come alone. You bring the drive, and you bring the girl. Or Rookhaven will learn what real fireworks look like. And I will start with the 1-bedroom apartment at Maple Court." The safe house the EACC provided was a sterile, windowless office on the 10th floor of a municipal building. It felt like a cage. Silas stood by the door, his long coat back on. He was checking the load of a fresh magazine. "I'm going alone. It's the only way to guarantee he doesn't trigger a dead man's switch. He wants me. He gets me." I stepped in front of him, blocking the door. My hands were shaking, but my voice was ice. "No." "Harlow, get out of the way. This isn't a discussion." "You're right, it's not," I said, my chin high. "You walk in there alone. You're not a sacrifice. You're a fool. He'll kill you, and then he'll come for my son. We are done playing his game, Silas. We've been winning because we stopped playing his game. We made our own." I turned to Mara and the EACC chairwoman, who were watching us from across the room. I held up the Tier 3 drive. "He wants a stage. We'll give him one. He wants an audience. We'll give him the whole city." I laid out the plan. It wasn't a mafia hit. It was a public execution of his reputation. "We don't go dark," I said. "We go bright. We synchronize this drive, all of it, with the NAOCD database. We open a live public feed. We patch it straight into the Rookhaven Community Access Channel, into their emergency broadcast system. When Victor Radek steps onto that roof, he won't be in the shadows. He'll be on every television, every phone, in this city. Midnight, the top floor of the Crown Line parking garage, the air was frigid, tasting of salt and exhaust. Victor Radek stood in the center, flanked by 2 armed men. He was arrogant, a king in his domain, expecting a dark, quiet exchange. At 1 minute past midnight, the world changed. It wasn't a spotlight, it was everything. Every floodlight on the Crown Line building. Every street lamp for 4 blocks. Every digital billboard that wasn't already showing his face flared to life at full power. The rooftop was suddenly as bright as noon, bleaching all the shadows. Victor threw up a hand, blinded. "What is this?" From a massive PA system the EACC had mounted on an adjacent building, my voice boomed across the industrial park. "We are live! Victor, the entire city is watching you. There are no more shadows." A tactical drone, operated by Nessa from 2 blocks away, hovered just out of rifle range, its red recording light a steady, unblinking eye. Victor's trap, his private duel, had just become a public stage. He panicked. He lunged, not for a gun, but for Silas. You did this." From the dark stairwell, a broken figure scrambled onto the roof. Deacon Marr. His arm was in a crude sling, his face a purple and yellow mask, but his good hand held a pistol. He wasn't aiming at Silas. He was aiming at me, where I stood with the EACC team near the access ramp. Before he could pull the trigger, another figure moved from the shadows. My mother, Rosie Vega. She'd refused to stay behind. She held up a small black device the EACC had provided and jammed the button. It wasn't a gunshot, it was a sound. A focused, high-frequency shriek, a sonic weapon that drilled straight into your skull. Deacon screamed, a thin, animal sound, clutching his head, his gun fired, the bullet whining harmlessly into the concrete barrier. He had been neutralized by a 60-year-old grandmother. It bought Silas 2 seconds. On the roof, Silas and Victor were grappling. Victor was strong, fighting with the desperation of a cornered animal. He was trying to get to a weapon in his ankle holster. "I'll kill you both. I'll burn that building down with your son in it." I saw the glint of the gun. I grabbed the only thing within reach, the heavy, steel-backed clipboard holding the EACC's official warrant. With every ounce of fear and rage in my body, I threw it like a discus. The steel edge connected with Victor's wrist. I heard a distinct, wet snap. The gun clattered to the concrete. Victor roared in pain. Silas didn't go for the fallen weapon. He didn't throw a punch. He slammed Victor against a concrete support pylon, and in one fluid motion, snapped a heavy-duty zip tie around his one good wrist, then looped it through the rebar of the pylon. He ratcheted it tight. He wasn't a killer. He was choosing justice, not blood. The trap was sprung. The remaining compromised INUB agents surged up the ramp, sirens blaring, trying to seize control. "He's in IB custody. This is our scene." The EACC chairwoman stepped directly into their path, her hand raised. "Stand down. This is a temporary federal jurisdiction under the NAOCD. Your authority here is revoked." "This is our city," the IIB agent snarled. From the PA system, a new voice. Clipped and official, the NAOCD director. "We confirm live recording. We confirm receipt of the full Fenrir data package. This is now a transparent public proceeding. All officers on this roof are on camera. I suggest you cooperate." The IIB agents, their faces broadcast across the city, froze. They lowered their weapons. Victor Radek, tied to the pylon, laughed, a raw, bubbling sound. "You think this stops me? You have nothing, the money is gone. I have a black fund in Mexico, untraceable. You can't touch me." I walked out into the center of the lights, holding my tablet, and angled the screen toward the drone's camera. "You mean the account you transferred $10 million to at 11:59 p.m. last night?" I hit the screen. The Tier 3 data, the final attachment flashed, the routing numbers, the invisible shell bank in Cabo, the transaction authorized by Victor himself. "The whole city sees it, Victor," I said, my voice quiet but carrying over the speakers. "The NAOCD sees it. There is nowhere left to hide." His face, broadcast on the billboard behind him, went slack. He was finished. The camera's local news crews had arrived, swarming the perimeter, all turned. They focused on Silas. He stood alone, his coat flapping in the wind. He could have walked away. Nessa was already signaling from the far ramp. He could have vanished into the city. A ghost. It was the instinct of a boss. Run. Survive. He looked at me. At the city lights. At the cameras. and he made his choice. He walked forward, past the EACC, past the cuffed Radek, and stood directly in front of the primary news camera. He raised his hands, not in surrender, but to show they were empty. "My name is Silas Caravello," he said, his voice deep and clear, carrying to every car radio, every living room. "For too long, I have operated in the shadows of this city. That ends tonight. I am reporting to the EACC to pay for my past and for the past of my family." He looked straight into the lens, his eyes finding mine. "But I am doing it on my terms, and I will not allow anyone ever again to touch my woman or my city." The knot wasn't just untied, it was cut. The EACC, riding a wave of public support, announced the resolution. My family was given permanent, round-the-clock federal protection. And Silas, he never saw the inside of a jail cell. He was the first entrant into a radical new municipal program, the Community Leadership Conversion Program. He forfeited 90% of his assets to a Brookhaven Revitalization Fund. His sentence, 5 years of binding community service. His first assignment was to use his expertise to run self-defense training for women at the Astor Parish Church. His second assignment was a sponsorship. The scene faded, the concrete and sirens dissolving into bright sunlight and the smell of cut grass. 3 months later, Astor Park. The stands were full. I was screaming, my voice raw. "Run, Evan, run." My son, my 8-year-old son, wearing the crisp white and red uniform of the Brookhaven Ravens, rounded third base. He launched himself, a blur of motion, toward home plate. He slid in a cloud of dust. "Safe!" the umpire yelled. The crowd exploded. I was on my feet, laughing, the tears streaming down my face. A hand, warm and steady, found mine. I looked over. Silas was sitting beside me, wearing jeans and a gray sweater. He looked younger. He looked at peace. He smiled, a genuine smile that lit his eyes, and he didn't seem to notice the sleek black monitoring anklet just above his sneaker. He leaned in. I met him halfway. We kissed. It wasn't the desperate, rain-soaked kiss of the hotel room. It was slow and sure and warm. It was the kiss of a promise kept, a future earned. The sound of the cheering parents faded, and all I could hear was the steady beat of his heart, matching mine. The view pulled back, up from the baseball diamond, over the cheering families, over the clean, new brick of the community center, and out toward the glass harbor. The storm was over. It was morning in Brookhaven. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? Let's connect in the comments and share your thoughts. Please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. And if you enjoyed this ride, please support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.